Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 47 of the Insight podcast presented by GovSight. I'm your host, Joe Magliocco. We're recording this episode on the evening of August 16th, so please be aware that some of the information stated in this podcast may change by the time you listen. This week, we'll learn about Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris, get a preview of the virtual Democratic National Convention, and discuss the scary QAnon conspiracy theory that is working its way into Republican circles. These stories and more on the Insight podcast. The Veep stakes came to a close last week with Joe Biden asking California Senator Kamala Harris to join him on the ticket as the Democratic vice presidential nominee. With me now to discuss is new GovSight reporter Ronald Minese. Ronald, since it's your first time on the pod, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself and how you got interested in politics and government?
Hey Joe, thanks. So I got really interested into politics and government coming around my junior and senior year of college at Virginia Tech. Just kind of being in the environment of being in public relations, seeing how the nature of the nation was. I was just always really interested. I'm actually going to law school next year to kind of get a little bit further into it and try to help change the country for the better.
Awesome. So, just to get us started, could you tell us a little bit more about Kamala Harris's background beyond her time as a presidential candidate?
So Kamala Devi Harris, she was an American politician and a lawyer. She actually served as the junior United States Senator from California since 2017. She was born in Oakland, California. She was a graduate of Howard University and the University of California Hastings College of Law. She began her career in Alameda County District Attorney's Office before she began getting recruited to the San Francisco's District Attorney's Office and later the City Attorney of San Francisco's office. In 2003, she was elected to the District Attorney of San Francisco. Subsequently, she was elected to the Attorney General of California in 2010 and in 2014. She defeated Loretta Sanchez in 2016 Senate election to become the second African American woman and the first South Asian American to serve in the United States Senate.
So, obviously, her selection is super important as Joe Biden tries to defeat Donald Trump and Mike Pence this November. What strengths does she bring to the Democratic ticket?
Well, as a senator, she supported healthcare reform, federal descheduling of cannabis, a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, the DREAM Act, a ban on assault weapons, progressive tax reform, and she's actually gained a lot of national recognition for her pointed questioning of the Trump administration and officials during the Senate hearings. And with that, with her being the third vice presidential running mate on a major party ticket after Geraldine Ferraro in 1984 and Sarah Palin in 2008, she comes on as somebody who can really bring the person of color aspect to the ticket, which helps Biden and his efforts against the Trump administration and trying to really move America into the new season that is coming into.
So, what ways do you think the Biden campaign is planning on deploying her?
Well, she has a very vibrant online presence with about 5 million Twitter followers, with her having an engagement of primarily younger voters. I think that she's going to be primarily deployed in an aspect of getting not the super voters out there, but getting the voters who are kind of on the fence, new to the age of being allowed to vote, and not sure of kind of where the nature of the country is going and not sure what they really want going forward. I think she'll be able to give an aspect of a new vision to the country on top of Biden's platform and be someone that can really get there for ground fundraising, grassroots, being there, being the face of a movement, helping with the pandemic forced limits and traditional campaigning that's currently being enforced across the country.
So, obviously, there were so many women that were being considered for Joe Biden's vice presidential nomination. Why do you think Kamala was the one in the end that the Biden campaign and Joe Biden himself ultimately decided to choose? How did she beat out the other competitors for the position?
Well, back in March, Biden actually committed to picking a woman as his vice presidential candidate, and Sood actually faced pressure from many to name a woman of color, something that would be both historic and actually recognized as demographic as one of the most loyal bases of the Democratic Party. He noted that he would like someone who is a modest amount of progressive intentions or beliefs. They would like somebody who isn't too much of a prosecutor, but is somebody who is willing to put their foot down and fight for a cause that they are really adamant about, somebody who's engaged with voters and movements, somebody who's down on the ground with the grassroots because of his history of being able to kind of lead and be on top, having somebody who can kind of be right there next to him on the side, but holding the hands with all the people that are around him. Especially during this time of national unrest over racism and racial injustice and things with the police force, having somebody who can represent a community that he may not always be able to understand, and somebody that can speak for that community and speak with that community from a comfortable position would allow him to be in a better position going forward, with everything going on with the country.
So obviously, you just touched a little bit upon how Kamala Harris's nomination is really groundbreaking. What have people been saying about the groundbreaking nature of her nomination and how she's going to become the first woman of color to appear on a presidential ticket?
Well, actually, Nathan Ballard, a Democratic strategist, said that she's a fantastic political athlete, and that when you picture assets in a campaign, and one of those assets being in the capacity to be able to go out there day after day and fight for you, Kamala Harris is essentially the best of the business. She's an energizer bunny. She'll go out there day after day, campaign with the most enthusiasm of anybody you'll have, and she will win for you day in and day out. Many supporters believe that she is uniquely suited for the position of going against Trump because she has the ability of getting under his skin and forcing him to really reimagine his position and come at her with facts, and all of the typical tactics that he is known for don't typically work with her.
Ronald, thanks so much. This week, Democrats are going to become the first major American political party to hold a virtual convention. With a preview for us from everything from Biden's speech to notable snubs is GovSight editor Jackie O'Neill. Jackie, just to get us started, who are the key speakers on each nights of the convention?
Well, the convention starts on Monday when Senator Bernie Sanders and former First Lady Michelle Obama will take the virtual stage for a keynote speech. That combo is sure to be a big draw for viewers, and it's also symbolic of the balance of interests in the party this year. Sanders, of course, represents the more progressive wing of the party, whereas Michelle Obama harkens back to the centrist, moderate tone of the last Democratic administration. On Tuesday, the keynote address will feature 17 rising stars of the party, the most famous of which is Stacey Abrams. All 17 will share a speech about Tuesday's theme, which is Leadership Matters. And that's an opportunity for the party to trot out some up and coming leaders without sacrificing too much of the limited airtime this year. Before that address, Representative Ocasio Cortez will speak, which is another nod to the party's progressive wing. On Wednesday, we'll hear from a series of big names: Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, former President Barack Obama, and VP nominee Kamala Harris will all speak. Then on Thursday, it's a bit of a mix. We'll hear from former presidential primary candidates Cory Booker, Pete Buttigieg, and Andrew Yang, who, by the way, was added to the lineup after he tweeted his surprise about being left out initially. And then next up are Senators Tammy Baldwin and Tammy Duckworth, both of whom were under consideration for the VP nod. And this all leads up to Joe Biden's acceptance speech, where he'll officially accept the party's nomination for president.
So, Jackie, we touched a little bit on the themes of each night, but what are the specific themes that the DNC has laid out? What do you think they say about the party's message and what they're trying to send to voters?
Right. So on Monday, the first day of the convention, the theme is We the People. And the goal here seems to be a display of unity against these triple threats of the pandemic, unemployment, and racial injustice. The DNC really wants to position Biden and the party as the side that's up to the job of confronting the problems that the American people are facing this year. Tuesday's theme is Leadership Matters. Like I said, this is the night where 17 speakers will share the keynote. The idea is to differentiate Biden from Trump and to ask Democrats and other Americans which team they'd like leading them through the next 4 years. On Wednesday, the theme is a more perfect union. And that's a pretty broad theme, but the goal is for the party leaders to portray the type of country that the party wants to work toward. And tonight's big name speakers will attest to what they think will be a brighter future under a Biden presidency. The last day's theme is America's Promise. This is Biden's coronation night, so you can expect that the speeches will be very Biden centric. The party really wants to convince listeners that Biden will be the type of president to make good on promises about the future prosperity and the well being of the country.
So, Jackie, we touched a little bit upon earlier who the big names are that are speaking, but there are also some big names that are not speaking. Could you tell us a little bit more about who didn't make the cut?
Right, so a couple of Biden's former primary challengers won't be making an appearance. Beto O'Rourke and Julian Castro were both left off the list. We also won't be seeing Susan Rice, who was under consideration for VP nominee and was rumored to be the last woman standing against Kamala Harris, who ultimately got the nod. The lineup is also missing a few former party stars, like former Vice President Al Gore and former President Jimmy Carter.
So, obviously there are a lot of speeches, but there are two big speeches that voters across the country will likely be tuning in for. And that's Senator from California, Kamala Harris, the vice presidential nominee, and the former vice president and nominee for president, Joe Biden. What do you think we could expect from their speeches?
Sure. So we know that Biden knows that he's speaking to a broad range of Democrats and certainly some other undecided voters as well. So we really shouldn't expect anything too bold. Biden needs to acknowledge the swath of the party that might be disenchanted by his centrism, but he also needs to appeal to never Trump Republicans who don't want to see him edging further left at this point in the game. We can't predict exactly what strategy Biden will go with, but we can expect that he'll cast himself as a foil to President Trump no matter what. He's going to want to come out with gravitas, he's going to want to speak powerfully and competently and seriously, and he's going to want to look and sound conventionally presidential, no pun intended. Harris's speech is going to be incredibly important for the party and for her. Democrats and Republicans are watching with an eye to 2024. If Biden is elected in November, he's unlikely to run for a second term. And this is Harris's first chance to really set herself up to slide into the party's nomination if Biden declines to run again. If she comes out weak or uninspiring, you can bet that other Democrats are going to start thinking about how they might swoop in and snatch the nomination in 4 years. We can also expect her to appeal to her background and the historic nature of her candidacy, things that might appeal to voters who were disappointed that Biden fits the white, male, moderate mold of former presidents and nominees.
Jackie, on top of it as always, thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
The QAnon conspiracy has been working its way into Republican circles for a while now. However, several Republican congressional candidates are now openly espousing their belief and even support for the conspiracy theory. With me on the pod now is Elijah Sharma to discuss the QAnon conspiracy and its relationship with the Republican Party. Elijah, since it's your first time on the pod, could you just tell us a little bit how you got interested in politics and government?
Yeah, so I got interested in politics and government just seeing the ways in which a government interacts with its people and how that can change radically based on where you are in this country, and kind of examining those differences and why that's the case has kind of been a small passion of mine.
So awesome. We're super excited to have you. And why don't we just start with what is QAnon?
So QAnon is a conspiracy theory that basically stems from the idea that there is this government operative that has gone rogue and is posting breadcrumbs of information to followers about this cabal of secret pedophile ring. Basically, it's a conspiracy theory in which it makes people believe that the world leaders are hiding this pedophile ring, and Donald Trump is secretly trying to dismantle it with the help of QAnon and these little breadcrumbs that are given to followers. You may know it by the very common hashtag where we go one, we go all. And it's popped up in many Republican circles, and it's been an increasing presence in Trump rallies. I mean, you've seen interviews with QAnon supporters, the large Qs, the WWGA, we go all. It's becoming a fixture of kind of Republican groundswell politics, and it has no basis in fact that we know of right now. I mean, we're talking about something that moved from chat room to chat room to chat room to the point where it's on a deplatformed site called 8chan that very few people have even heard of, except for this small, very dedicated group of people. We're not even sure if this is people person. There's very little information about it, but it has become incredibly pervasive in mainstream politics in the way that we talk about this kind of stuff, especially when we look at what happened in Georgia 14 this past week with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who believes this, among other things, and is likely going to be the representative for Rome, Georgia. That's not insignificant.
So, one of the most interesting things that people who study this and follow conspiracy theories, and one of the things that they've really been pointing out is that this group of people is really dangerous. Could you just elaborate on that?
No, it's been well documented that this group has the potential for violent acts. I mean, there was a recent arrest at the Hoover Dam where someone threatened to shoot up the Hoover Dam. There was another attack in which a guy was pulled off the road on the highway and found with a number of blades on him with the intent to go kill Joe Biden. A West Point report listed it as a security threat in the making. FBI report says similar things. It is a hotbed for domestic terrorism, for lack of a better words. And we've seen it kind of coalesce around other fringe extremist movements that have the potential for domestic terrorism as well, such as the Boogaloo movement, which believes that a second civil war is coming, and other highly armed militia groups. The thing about QAnon is the way it interacts with other conspiracy theories. It is a conspiracy theory that is just malleable enough that it's been able to fit into all of these other different conservative fringe groups, everything from anti-vaxxers to the Boogaloos to Tea Party people. And this is an ideological shift that honestly makes the Tea Party look like something of a Tea Party. This is a market shift right, and it's why Republican leaders like Scalise are increasingly worried about if these ideas are going to take hold in Republican politics.
So, yeah, that gets us straight into our next question. How is it creeping its way into the Republican Party?
There are a number of Republican candidates who have espoused beliefs for QAnon. A number of them notched considerable upsets. We just talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia 14. That's Rome, Georgia. That is not a small town. We also have Lauren Boebert in Colorado. That would be Colorado District 3. She just upset an incumbent for the first time in Colorado politics in the last 20 something years. These are massive shifts. And then you go back to Georgia and you have Angela Stanton King, who again she's a candidate and she's primarying a Republican candidate, but she believes and has espoused that Hillary Clinton had a kill list. These are not kind of your run of the mill Republican beliefs. This is not small government. This is not lower taxes. This is something different. And it's being shown that, I mean, look, we have Georgia to Colorado, just that alone. There are a number of Republican candidates that at the very least flirt with the idea. Maybe they don't fully support it or come out and say it, but they give little winks and little nudges. We see this especially with the president. The president has not condemned QAnon, but he has retweeted it, amplified it, given nudges to it, alluded to it, done symbols in which that he knows that community is looking to see. A lot of ink has been spilled over the far right okay symbol, but it's something that I'm not going to say that I believe in this, but I'm not going to tell you I don't, so that you keep going along with it. And I think it's been a strategy that's been incredibly effective for the president, but it's helped this conspiracy theory make it into the mainstream. I mean, there was a New York Times article just this week that said this was the week that QAnon became a mainstream issue. And it really is true. There have been reporters like Ben Allen who have been looking at this for a very long time, from when it first started to bubble up to where it is now. And the difference is striking. We are talking about a movement that has 4.5 million people across 170 groups on Facebook and Instagram. This is not a small movement, and Facebook says they're trying to ban it and says they're trying to minimize it, but it's very pervasive and it's not going away. And ideas like this, as unfounded as they are, can spread incredibly quickly. And it's kind of hard to debunk that there isn't a group of elites that are running a pedophile ring, except for the fact that it's just a fantastic notion with no grounding in reality. And that's not enough for a lot of people anymore.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, especially as big tech has had differing approaches. Twitter has started deplatforming thousands of QAnon accounts, especially ones that had humongous followings. Facebook is taking a different approach, trying to, in the coming weeks, and months. They're trying to change their algorithms so it stops becoming recommended content for people. It's certainly a huge issue. And I think something that people may not have seen that this week is Chuck Todd has started, NBC's political director has started referring to QAnon as a virus, and specifically a virus within the Republican Party. It is super dangerous. Elijah, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for coming on the pod, and we're super excited to have you here at GovSight.
Thanks for having me. Excited to come back.
If you'd like more insight on the happenings of politics and government, subscribe wherever you listen to our podcast and catch new episodes every week. Plus, subscribe to our interview series, Check In by GovSight. If you like what you hear on any of our podcasts, please drop a rating and review if you have a minute. It really helps us out. Of course, follow GovSight on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and take a peek at our GoFundMe, because your donations make our mission possible. Finally, head over to govsight.com to learn a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and how we are making citizenship simplified. For GovSight News, I'm your host, Joe Magliocco. Thanks for listening.